Okay, great to see everyone. And listen, thank you for persevering, staying with us. It's wonderful to be into day 3 and see so many people in the room. Because yesterday was, it was a great day, but it was a long day. So really appreciate you sticking with the conference and remaining with us for what I think is going to be a great morning. Now, breakfast was a little meager this morning, but there's a reason for that. We're going to do a decent mid-morning break. So there will be goodies, some hot sandwiches and things like that at the mid-morning break. So we want to sort of stagger the rotation of the food a little bit today, because I know some people will be leaving at lunchtime and then others are heading out on the site visit. So that's the reason for the reversal around of the food this morning. The second thing, I just have a couple of announcements. So the second thing is on the agenda, on the app, there is a poll running. Elizabeth set it up this morning. And it relates to MOF and the duration of MOF. So we wanted to get your feedback and your thoughts. We've been here for 3 days. We were in for a half day on Monday. Obviously, there was the DMO breakfast in the morning, but we had, an afternoon. Then we had the full day yesterday, and we're here for a half day today. Next year, we're looking at, do we keep the current schedule and have 2 half days and 1 full day? Or would you prefer if we moved to a 2-day conference? So the choice is yours. We're flexible, but we wanted to get some thoughts from you. So there is a poll running, so maybe think about it. What would work best for you? Think about, you're traveling in and out of a destination. Would 2 full days work better for you than the current format of 2 half days and 1 full day? So that's running at the moment, so have a look at that. Also on the app, there are items that have been handed into reception, lost and found. So if you've lost coats or folders or jewellery over the past couple of days, the team are keeping them safe for you. So please check in at reception, but we have had some hand-ins. I hope you enjoyed the Polar Bear Walk this morning, those are run, those of you that were out and about, and thank you to OmniTrack for sponsoring that. Also, don't forget that the leaderboard and the photo competitions are still open, but they will close before 11:30, and we'll be announcing the winners. And also remember that the raffle prizes that we talked about yesterday will be valid for next year, because we are coming back to Houston next year. So all prizes that are within that raffle can be used next year. And again, just a little reminder, the proceeds go to the Periwinkle Arts in Medicine Foundation. And I just wanted to stress that in this instance, all of the money collected goes straight to the charity. It is not separated out for any administration. So just be assured that your money is going straight to the cause in this instance. Right, and then the last thing I just wanted to say before I hand over to Stephanie, obviously, and in case I don't get to do this before the end of the day, this conference doesn't just come together. Behind the scenes, there are a committed group of people who have worked on the program committee since last July in terms of planning this event, helping to select themes, speakers, following up, doing a lot of the work that has got us to where we were today over the last couple of days. And the planning committee, the planning and marketing committee for this year included Danny Gorino, Chris Kavanagh, Anna Blount, Stephanie Brown, Ian Centrone, Cindy Decker, Heath Dilliard, Tony Lyle, Marlies Taylor, Kathy Palmer, and Mike Kirstad. So Suzanne and myself, on behalf of this group, want to sincerely thank the planning committee. So maybe you might give them a round of applause. they've been great, and they've been really committed to trying to bring the best program possible forward for your benefit this year. Okay, so I think that's it on the notes for now. And I'm going to ask Stephanie Brown, who was on our planning committee, one of our very active members, to come forward, because Stephanie is going to moderate this next session, and indeed the whole idea around the next session, looking at media purchasing across the generations, was actually Stephanie's idea. So I think you'll find it a really good interactive session.
Good morning. Well, thank you for being with us to kick off the final day of the Marketing Outlook Forum. It's been a great conference, and it's been such a pleasure to get to interact with so many of you. I'm Stephanie Brown, and I've been a destination researcher. I've been an attractions marketer. I've been a destination CEO. So I've walked a lot of miles in all of your shoes. And now I have the pleasure of being with the Smari Insights team to support our destination partners around the country. So we're here today. We're going to spend the first 45 minutes or the first 30 minutes presenting our observations on something that we think is emerging as an important issue in destination advertising. And then we're going to move on for your questions and answers and your questions. You know, it's fine if we leave here today with more questions than we have answers. Because I think this is an issue that's really emerging. It's something that I brought to the planning committee based on what we're seeing for our clients all around the country, and it's a consistent, really, pattern with everybody. And so I'm joined today by Kelly Robinson. It's our first speaker. She's the president and CEO of the Brivik Media Group. She's an expert in traditional and digital media, and she's going to set the stage by talking about the shifting landscape in media purchasing. And then Heather Huckabee, the Director of Research and Strategic Insights for Visit California, is going to contextualize that and talk about the implications for destination advertising. But before we do that, I thought it would be fun to interpret some data together. So what I'm going to show you is data on awareness of advertising for a number of different destinations. So this first one is awareness by age, and this is from a mid-sized city. And there's a quiz at the end. I want you to tell me what this means. The second is data from a campaign in the Mid-Atlantic by generation. So pay attention, because I want to hear what you think this means. The third, this is a small city in the South, and we're showing the advertising awareness by medium and by age. Okay, are you looking at it? This is too fast? You want to go back? Okay, good, you're taking this seriously. That's awesome. Okay, so we've got that one. Okay, so this one is from a Midwestern state, and it's ad awareness by medium, digital, out of home, social print, and by generation. This is a big city, and we're looking at it also by medium and by generation. This data is from a state in the South, ad awareness by age, by medium. This is a small city. Again, we're showing ad awareness by generation. This one shows the ad awareness by different campaigns. So this is one destination. It's a state. And I've blocked the name of the campaigns. But what you're looking at are, each group of bars is showing you ad awareness by generation for a different campaign. So what do you observe in this data? Okay. Somebody tell, what do you think, Jason? Okay. All right, that's a good one. Who else? It's hard to see you all. Chelsea? Yeah. Okay. Yep. Dan is on the right track. Anybody else? Oh, okay. So, all right. So the common theme in all of this data is that we're seeing lower levels of awareness among boomers, regardless of campaign, geography, for campaigns all across the country. We're seeing this same trend. And so our team at Smart Insights started to really dig into, what the cause is. And so that's what our panel is here to talk about today, is how different types of media are reaching generations, and should we care about that? Does it matter? Some of you are probably thinking, well, my target audience is Gen Z anyway, so why do I care? So I'm going to hand this over to Kelly to set the stage and talk about the 101 of media buying.
Great. Thank you. All right, so I'm Kelly Robinson, president of Brivik Media Group. We are a full-service media planning and buying agency located in Houston. So welcome to Houston. I hope everyone had a great time. We're proud to work with Houston First as well as Visit Houston for many years. So we are very experienced in the tourism, advertising, and media. Which one do I do? So what is a media planning and buying agency? The very easy answer to that is we connect messages to people. Very simple. We take your creative, we take your message, and we connect it to the people that you want to reach. The long answer is this. So what we like to do is really group it into three pieces. You have your planning, your buying, and your stewardship. So planning is kind of the first step. It's working with a client and learning who, what, where, when, why, how. Taking all of that data and doing extensive research, finding out who that audience is. How do we reach them? What media do we need to use? What levels of impressions, frequency, reach? Build all of that out, work with the client, and come up with a great strategy. After that, buying, which sounds really easy. You're just buying it, right? You're working with vendors, you're working with TV, digital, but there's a lot that goes into it. And the main thing is negotiation. So what we're doing is negotiating on your behalf, on a client's behalf, trying to stretch that dollar as much as we can. And that's going to be across added value or getting premium spots, getting reduction in rates, and really just kind of getting the best buy that we can for you. And then the last piece is going to be the most important. It doesn't stop with buying. It starts with stewardship. And stewardship is making sure that we are getting what we paid for. That means if I'm getting 1 million impressions, I better be getting 1 million impressions. And if not, we're going to fight for you. So stewardship to my agency is the most important piece to this. You can plan, you can buy all day, but it's that end part, the stewardship, that's really important. And then what I'm going to do right now is just kind of go over some Media 101 with you. High level, talk about media, where it is right now. And then I'm going to go into a little bit more on media habits. So I think, and you guys talked about video, but video is huge right now. It is a crazy landscape. You have linear TV, which is going to be traditional TV. It's your ABC, your CBS, your cable. And then we have this new thing called streaming, or OTT, which is over the top, or it's your connected devices. It's you plugging into your TV and being able to watch Netflix and Hulu. And so there's this big divide now. And what's better? And you know what? Both are really good. So for linear TV, the way that you're going to buy linear TV is by program or day part or station. It's very different with streaming. You're buying it by platform. Are you buying Hulu or an aggregator? You're not buying by day part. There is no prime time anymore. Prime time is any time. And then for pricing for linear TV, you're really going to base that off of ratings, which is your Nielsen. It's based on inventory and seasonality. Whereas streaming or OTT is, again, just is the inventory there and what platform are you using? And measurement, very important. We use Nielsen as our measurement for linear TV, but the beauty of digital is there are so many ways to measure it. You can measure it with an ad server, you can measure it with a partner, you can measure it, your ad fraud. There are so many pieces there that help you evaluate and make sure that it's effective. And then the last two pieces kind of go hand in hand. The strengths of any kind of video is it's visual, it tells a story, and it reinforces your other pieces. It's more of your top of the funnel and gets them to get very emotionally involved. The weakness, it's fragmented. There are so many places you can be now with video, linear as well as streaming. And it's the most expensive no matter what you look at. No matter which way you look at it, any kind of video is going to be your most expensive medium. And so you have to have an investment there. It's expensive to make the creative, it's expensive to put it on air. Here's a side-by-side on audio. So we have terrestrial AM, FM, radio, and then streaming, which is your Pandora and your Spotify. Very similar to linear TV, you're buying your radio off of programs, day parts, and stations, whereas with streaming audio, it's the platform or the specific placement. Pricing for radio, it used to be called Arbitron, it is now Nielsen, so we're going to monitor ratings off of that. And pricing is heavily affected by seasonality. So if you live here in Houston, you know that March is rodeo. And rodeo season sells out radio. So when I'm working with a client, I'm gonna tell them to either avoid March or you're gonna have more money because it's just gonna be highly competitive. Strengths for any kind of audio, it's immediate. I can get you up in a couple of days. The production of a radio spot is very cheap, and many times stations will produce it for you, or even streaming audio platforms like a Pandora or a Spotify. But the weakness is it's smaller audiences because you have dedicated listeners to different stations. And then also for streaming audio, something that I think people don't really realize is that many people pay not to have ads. And so when you're looking at like a Spotify, the majority of those subscribers pay not to have ads. So your audience is much smaller. And if you're going to go into Spotify, you're not gonna have a good reach, but you're gonna have great frequency. And then the last two I wanna go over are more traditional. You have print and out of home. And these are still very important. Print is bought by size, placement or color, and it's really about your frequency or what your rate card looks like. What we like about print, it's tangible. People hold it. They love to look at magazines. They love to read their newspapers. I consider it a lean back medium, meaning you're leaning back and you're enjoying yourself. You're touching those pages. You're looking at all the ads. Whereas like digital to me is a lean forward. You're on your phone and you're just rapidly consuming media. You're not really slowing down. The bad thing about print, long lead time. Months, you need to have your creative 30 days out, 60 days out. And there's a lot of clutter, but some people like it when you're reading magazines. Out of home is my favorite medium. It is the most creative, and I don't think people think that way, but it is. How you buy it is by location. You have your traditional billboards, but you could do murals, you can do kiosks, you can do digital video. I mean, go look at Times Square. It's amazing what they can do down there. Pricing is based on inventory, and what's really great about out of home is it's not necessarily cheap, but for what you're getting so many impressions that your CPMs are gonna be really low, and you can target very specifically. Weaknesses, out of home is the hardest creative to do. People forget that you can only have like 8 words on it, and they want to put everything on it. So it's the hardest to create. So you have to be mindful of that. I don't want to go into too many media terms here, but I wanted to highlight a couple here for you. The first two I'm going to call like traditional kind of terms. So you have a rating point or a gross rating point. You're going to hear these sorts of things in radio and TV, and really what it is 1% of your target audience. And with a rating point goes into cost per points. A cost per point is really how you compare different media to see what is the most efficient. If I have two TV shows, two prime TV shows, and one is $1,000 cost per point and one's $500, then I know which one's priced more effectively. The second group here is kind of more like where we're going, what direction we're going in from a measurement standpoint, and it's impressions. Impressions are great because they're so much easier to add up together. And this is just the total number of impressions that you're getting reaching your target audience. It's very simple. And then rather than a cost per point, you're going with a cost per thousand. And it's just another way to measure what's effective. Something might be more expensive or something might be more cheaper. And then the last two are just classic terms, reach and frequency, that I know we all talk about. So reach is going to be how many people have the opportunity to see your messaging. And I say opportunity because it's not guaranteed. And then there's frequency, which is how many times did those people see your advertising message. And these two are the most important terms when we're building out a media campaign, because we need to know, is our focus reach or is our focus frequency? You can't have high reach and high frequency. It's really impossible. So next, I'm just going to go into some just media habits and what we're seeing across the board with all media in the past 5 years. So this might be hard to see, but this is pulled off of Nielsen. It is a 5-year study of what media habits look like overall, 18 plus. And what I think is really interesting is look at that top one, digital. This is time spent. So 50% in 2018, and now it's all the way up to 63%. And the big winners here are going to be your connected TV and streaming. It's important. We all know that. The other pieces are going to be your traditional media, and they're still there, but they are slowing down. And TV is probably one of the ones that has taken a really big hit because, again, it's so fragmented. There's so many opportunities on where you can be. But just really interesting. Okay, so this is a really simple slide, but 99% of my campaigns target 25-54. It's a great target. It's a quality target. People consume media. It's great, but you're leaving a lot of people out. You're leaving a lot of people out, and you're leaving a lot of money off the table. And so we really need to look at that and consider, is there value in maybe someone younger or especially someone who's older? If you're targeting this, then you're limiting yourself. This, I thought, was really exciting. There are 6 generations that you can market to right now. It's crazy. There's 6. And I think the bulk of these are, we're looking at baby boomers, Gen X, and millennials. Gen Z's coming in. And then we have Gen Alpha, who knows what they're going to be doing. My daughter's in that one. So to me, you're really focusing on 4 of these. You have your baby boomers who really, consume media in a very traditional form. They're comfortable with TV, print, and radio. Gen X, they're savvy with their technology. They're still going to have a little bit more of the traditional side, but they are consuming a lot of digital media. Millennials are the first generation to just live in the digital landscape. They are high adopters of all new digital technology. They were the first ones to grow up with social media. And so they really prefer the digital piece. And then the Gen Z, very similar to millennials, but they are even more just ingrained in digital. And that's just really important for you to know. So I want to take the next 2 slides and just hone in on 65 plus so you can see what their media habits look like. This is pulled from Nielsen again, and really just kind of the pie chart shows you how they're consuming their media throughout the day. What's the biggest thing? It's linear TV. They're watching a lot of TV. You can even add in that 9% streaming TV. It's huge. The 60% of their media habits are on video. That's important. Other places that they're not on out of home because they're not driving as much. But traditional radio is also on here. So this really just shows you that traditional media might be a good place for you. And I'm just going to end with how do you reach these baby boomers? Just 4 key takeaways here. You want to diversify your media mix and not forget about that traditional media because it's alive and well. It's great. It tells a story and it helps convert. You want to, again, embrace that traditional media, the TV, the radio, the print. And then I think, really, you need to target them separately. Don't group them together. So if you said that you wanted to reach 25 plus, a lot of your impressions are going to go to the younger demo because you're not targeting that 65 plus or 55 to 64. So it's very important that you pull that demographic out and really touch them with your messaging. And just, again, I want you guys to know that 51% of time spent is on linear TV. So it's just a really important takeaway. And so thank you so much. I'm going to pass it over to Heather.
All right, I'm going to take a second to, this is a very tactical session. So I'm going to just take a little second to pull back about why we travel. On the side of my slide here is a waterfall in Yosemite Valley. And 2 times a year, the sun, as it's setting, is at just the right angle that the sun hits this waterfall and it just looks like it's on fire. That's not photoshopping. That's what it looks like for only about 30 minutes a day, twice a year. One of those times is in February, and in about 10 days, I'm going to be sitting in Yosemite Valley, bundled up, hoping to see this myself. It's a bucket list experience. I can guarantee you, if the stars align and I get to experience this, honestly, just being in Yosemite Valley is an emotional experience. It's just so awe-inspiring, and that's why we travel. We travel for this emotional experience and benefit that we get, but that's not what I'm gonna talk about. So let me just tell you a little bit about Visit California. We market for the state of California, but we are not a government-associated state DMO. We are industry funded, so 5 different categories of industries have decided collectively to give tax themselves, in essence, an assessment fee which funds Visit California. So attractions, accommodations, rental cars, transportation and travel services, and restaurant and retail. Those 5 categories all do a self-assessment. It's voluntary, but those assessment fees go to us, and then we market for the state of California. We sit very high up about inspiration and awareness. You see I've got Brand USA even further up there for when we're doing our international global marketing. But then we work with all our local DMOs. We've got some California DMOs here from Sonoma and Lake Tahoe, and I'm gonna forget somebody. Sonoma, wait, did I say Sonoma? Twice. Okay, so that's where we sit. So now I'm gonna just give you some facts and figures about generation. So this is disposable household income. You can see that Gen X has the largest disposable household income. Gen Z, of course, fairly low. Only half of Gen Z, not even quite half, are adults at this point in time. So the adult population of Gen Z will keep growing, of course, every single year. But there's more to the story than just income. There's wealth. And so when we look at net household wealth, that largest blue segment at the bottom are baby boomers. And we're at 2023, which is about in the center of this chart, projects out to 2030. So in 2030, the projection is Gen X and baby boomers, that's about 45% of the population and 76% of the wealth. And then millennials on here, 16% of the population, 24% of the population, 16% of net wealth. This is just the same thing, only showing the growth in total wealth over time. You can see Gen Z's not even on this chart at this point. Here's Gen Z. They're winning at debt. So there's been a lot of talk about the future of travel and Gen Z, but I think the key word there is future. The millennials were really, their buying power was thwarted because many of them were coming of age into starting their careers during the Great Recession, and now we've sort of got a deja vu happening with Gen Z, where so many Gen Z will be coming of age during these very turbulent times of a pandemic, maybe a recession, certainly economic uncertainty. Now, having said all that, I've just shown you those slides, you must be thinking, wow, these older generations must be really important to Visit California. So let me just tell you, at California, we have two really core audiences: millennials, families, the sweet spot, millennial families. For our ad-influenced spending, measured by Smari Insights, 65% of our ad-influenced spending comes from millennials. That's a core audience. 55% comes from millennial families. That's a core audience. We're not taking our eye off of millennials. We also have a super strong owned team. We have a TikTok strategy. We are definitely looking at Gen Z. We understand where the future is going with Gen Z, but we also understand that it is in the future. We have great resonance with the Gen Z that we can see in our research. So we've got that. We're kicking butt with millennials, but what are we leaving off the table with the older generations? So here's anticipated travel spending. So what this shows is under age 50 to the left, and then with each subsequent 10-year increment, the anticipated travel spending goes up first, 36%, then 53%, and then that oldest generation anticipated travel spending is 136% larger than the spending under age 50. We've got some older generations laughing down here. Okay, so if you've got money, if you've got that wealth, then it also means you're a little less buffeted by economic headwinds. So this is a question fielded by our friends from Destination Analysts last year, asking about, even in a recession, would travel be a worthwhile investment? And so never guess what? Older generations, they've got more money, they're more likely to say, yeah, that's really important to me. It doesn't matter if we go into a recession next year. Okay, so I'm going to just reiterate a couple of points that Kelly already made. Time spent with TV looks very different across generations. This one puts it another way. This is time spent by platform, so not just TV, which is the traditional TV, which is the light blue, but then you've got different media platforms. That first bar is 18 plus. So if you just want to say, well, I want to go where everyone is, I'm just going to look at that first bar in total. Well, when you do that, when we build our marketing campaigns around total media habits, because media habits are not the same as we go across generations, we're not going to get equal results because those next four bars don't look like the total bar. The total bar roughly looks like 35 to 49-year-olds, but we're probably going to over or under index in every other generation if we just think about our total media buy. So, but that's what we've done. So I've pulled out 5 separate years of, this is our distribution of impressions that Visit California bought. So in the 5 years, fiscal year 17-18 before the pandemic, and then just this past spring, 2022, we massively increased digital OTV 213%. We're going where the eyeballs are, the total eyeballs are. And we declined on linear TV. We cut that by a quarter. So what happened? So we do multiple layers promoting California, but we always have what we consider our main brand campaign. In 2018, that brand campaign was Living the Dream. And you can see the recall there across generation, and we didn't have an issue. We were reaching all generations pretty equitably. So this was not at all on our radar 5 years ago. Of course, we had some pretty rough years in the intervening 5 years, but let's fast forward. Let's forget about a couple of those years. Let's fast forward to 2022. Our brand campaign was Am I Dreaming? And now suddenly, when we look at our recall by generation, we're not equitably reaching across generation. Now, have we been targeting millennials? They're a core audience, sure. We identified, Visit California identified millennials through a global research study done by SMARI years ago, and we've been, really targeting the millennial audience. Well, we're kicking butt with that audience at this point, but this is worrisome given how much resources to travel that Gen X and boomers have, and the fact that we're really not reaching them to the same level. We also use a very layered approach in California, and we have done the research that shows that there's a lot of synergy across our layers. So we get a 1 + 1 = 3 type of impact when people are able to recall not just one, but multiple of our campaigns. And because recall in overall is down, also we have less of that layered impact amongst older generations as well. And so Deanne actually started asking this question when, in response to the slides that Stephanie showed, which is, what is happening? Is it who we're targeting, who we're buying for, or is there something more sinister going on, which is reach really reaching? Because when I talk to my media company, they assure me that we are buying and over-indexing still against older generations. So I am getting impressions, reach, but that doesn't mean that it's being absorbed and taken in and recognized by older generations. This happens to be about, do you pay at least a little attention to a movie theater ad? So obviously we're not talking about movie theater ads, we're talking about mostly TV and digital ads, but basically the older we get, apparently the less we pay attention to ads. So you can serve me ads all day long, I'm pretty good at ignoring them, and apparently that's a skill that gets even more refined with age. So, so we are older. I'm putting myself in that bucket. These are not highlights. This is gray hair. So as we get older, we are harder to reach just at the point when we have so much purchasing power. By the way, I'm going to I don't know if I can back up. I can't back up. I'm just going to give a little plug here. This is actually from a book by Bobby Duffy. Write that down. It's called The Generation Myth. And if you have questions, concerns, or intrigued about the differences across generations, this is a great book. It's pretty snarky, so I really like it. But it's a really fascinating, really digs down into what are truly generational differences versus what are life stage differences that we sometimes falsely equate with generational differences. So anyway, really good read for all the research nerds, and I believe you are my people out there. I recommend that book. Okay, so I think we're getting close to sort of opening this up to questions. This is what Visit California is doing, is we feel like we've got a great brand strategy, but this is where if we don't have a good tactical execution, that great brand strategy isn't going to reap the rewards that we want. And so looking at this data, we have got to compensate. We can't just keep doing the same type of media purchasing. We're going to keep getting the same results. So we have to compensate. This is, I think, like the way media buying has gone is that I think there's an impression it's just not sexy to target by demographics, because we want to target with different psychographic or behavioral indicators. Like there's more sophisticated ways to target. I'm not saying you don't use other ways to target too, but if you look at your data and you see this dynamic going on, there's nothing wrong with targeting by age when you identify a dynamic that's happening because of the environment. And then this is not, I think, something that we can solve very simply, so we are trying a number of different strategies to affect change, but we're going to have to keep monitoring that and adjust over time to see, does our compensation techniques happen so that we can start to change the results. I think that's it.
All right. Thank you, Heather. So if anyone has a question, raise your hand. I wanted to just point out, while the mic comes, maybe to Denise in the front, I just wanted to point out something that really jumped out at me about that you both touched on. And I'm thinking, you know, in my career, I think I've been responsible for $100 million worth of advertising and worked with a dozen agencies. I don't think we have ever had our media buy segmented by generation. And you both kind of touched on how important that is, that if we're just buying 25 to 65, or that, you know, we're going to disproportionately reach the younger generation. So, Denise?
Kelly, one question I have for you I'm interested in, because we measure a lot of destination campaigns, and one of the trends we've seen too is people spending more money, supposedly buying lots more impressions. Like, we'll compare the impression numbers over years, and they purchased a lot more, but the recall is a lot less. Is it just the fragmentation, or what's going on there where there's so many more impressions they're supposedly purchasing, but they don't seem to be translating into people recalling those ads?
You know, I think there's a couple of different ways to look at it. So one, it could be the creative. It wasn't memorable, or it needed to be tweaked. But the other thing is you can throw as many millions and millions of impressions at a target, and you might be spreading it too thin. Like, if you're doing a 25 to 54 target, that's a lot of people. You need a lot of impressions to build a frequency up there. So, you know, I think you have to just be smart with those impressions and make sure you're targeting them correctly.
Do we have somebody over there?
Over here.
Thank you so much. This is great. This one's for Heather, and I have a question about as you're considering and targeting the Gen X and the boomers, is the creative considerations across campaigns. Have you started to have the creative execution become more specific for those targets, or is it just?
So honestly, so everyone thinks, oh, California, we have such a big budget. It's true, we do have a fairly large budget, but we're still not, you know, a non-endemic brand. We still don't have enough money where we feel like we can make completely different campaigns. We try to create a campaign that has as broad of a reach and appeal as possible. We are looking, and we've been doing research over the past 6 months to explore qualitatively and quantitatively how the different generations respond to our ads, to make sure, like, do you literally need to see someone who looks more like yourself in the ad for it to resonate? I think that a lot of our research says that's not necessarily the case, but we are taking that in consideration as we develop next year's brand piece. So we'll be working over the next year on a new brand spot. We just have a new family spot. So we have 2 big campaigns that are every other year. So this year in March, you're going to see a family spot from California. We're actually really excited about it because usually our family spot does really well with families. It does less well if you don't have younger kids at home. It did about as well as it normally would do with families, but this year it actually has tested really, really well with everyone. Doesn't matter whether you have kids or not. And so we're kind of curious to see how that campaign is going to do, just because it seems to be hitting the right emotional notes for everyone, even though it's got a lot of kids in it.
Yeah. I think that's a really great point too, that, you know, I think we have an exaggerated view of how specifically we're targeting and reaching our target, because there, you know, there's always overlap. That's what we always see in our advertising. You're targeting this group, but a broader audience is seeing it. Wendy?
Hi, I have 2 questions. One, and being a baby boomer, so I'll speak on behalf of all baby boomers, is that when you say the linear TV in that bucket, but my guess is, from my experience, is I watch news. You know, starting with Good Morning America, and whether it be cable news or network news, and maybe sports. I'm not watching programs. Then I switch over.
Yep.
So it's where you're placing it. So I think we're probably the only group that watches news anymore, and reads newspapers too. But anyway, okay, so you confirm that it's more the live programming.
This was such a high-level view, just saying linear, but we can dive in and just show you exactly what works best from a day part perspective. What we're seeing is new live programming. We call it appointment viewing. Appointment viewing is important. That's your news. That's the Super Bowl. It is any kind of sporting, or like the Grammys were just on. Appointment viewing is really important from a linear perspective.
Okay, and so for Heather and Smari too, your campaign, the 2022, that spot, if not anybody's seen it, that's different. That's a little quirkiness to it in terms of who the character is. As a boomer, when I watched it, I went, whoa, this isn't talking to me at all. As an industry person, I said, okay, I get it. I get who they're talking to. But as a boomer, I was very dismissive of that ad.
So you are actually, sample of one, but you are exactly right. Am I Dreaming? We actually did release that during the Super Bowl. And that did not test as well among older generations. And we got some, there's always, when you look at the verbatims, there's always like really some quirky remarks in the verbatims, but some of the older generations had very pointed feedback about that ad. Now that ad has done super well, particularly with our core audiences. That's why, again, I'm excited, because this year's release, even though it's targeted to family, I can't wait, Wendy, for you to see the new ad. I bet you are going to think that it resonates more with you than Am I Dreaming did.
Thank you so much for this discussion. I think it's been really great. I have a question about, so combating this overall lack of recall, regardless of medium, just the inattentiveness and not remembering things, and the ability to be dismissive for ads. So if you haven't been consistently trying to break into consideration sets for older generations, if you've been doing continuous years of targeting of the millennial generations, to what extent has anybody done, or is there an opportunity to do longitudinal research where, because the millennials of today will be the, not boomers by actual generational definition, but they will be the older generations of tomorrow. And we know that the best predictor of somebody coming to your destination in the future is that they came when they were younger, and they've been multiple times. So is there sort of like a sweet spot tipping point where continuously successfully reaching younger generations, you know, not to be dismissive of older ones, like you want to fold them into things, but can you be okay with maybe not doing as well now reaching them? Because if you're doing well reaching people when they're younger, when they're older, even if they don't remember an ad that they saw from you that year, they remember coming 15 years ago with their kids.
That's actually a great question that I feel like Bobby Duffy would have an answer to, who wrote that book. I mean, if that's true, our ads were reaching boomers when they were younger. But even though we're high up in inspiration, you still need to remind people, hey, don't forget about California. You had this great trip there, 10 years ago, and you haven't come back. We still need to get out there. So I think that there's some truth to that. I think, though, to just like write off 75% of the wealth in the country, because even though we're doing so well with millennials, I think it's important enough that we're taking a second look at it.
I think the other thing that comes to mind, Ashley, was such a great question, is that the past doesn't necessarily predict the future. And trend lines break. And Heather showed some data from 5 years ago that showed that this wasn't really a dynamic. But I think it's important that research instruments that we're using are sensitive enough, and the depth of analysis is there to detect when something shifts so that we can respond. And now, I think what what we heard today is that one response is that we need to are targeting addressing these generational differences. Because, and I'd love for us to come up with a different way of talking about the generations instead of just older. How about valuable? How about frequent travelers? How about people with a lot of money? And so I feel like, as an industry, we're kind of, dismissing this age category that many of us in the room, are in. And we have a lot of travel left to do. So do we have time for one more question, Sheila?
Hi. So I just wanted to ask about seasonality. So we have a little lodging place way up in New York, and it's very, very seasonal. Our CVB focuses, they're never advertising when all of our bookings are coming in. They're always behind. And so, and part of that's budget, because they're very focused on trying to attract folks when it's summer. But reality is the bookings for summer are happening now. And how do we find better ways? Certainly, it's all changing internationally. The timeline for making decisions, this is all changed, right? With airfares changing and whether you can change a flight or hotel, et cetera. Just curious how you guys are looking at that.
We monitor we do a lot of research here specifically for Houston. One, where are they coming from and how long do they take to make their decision? And what we've seen since the pandemic, it's shorter now. It's pretty immediate. They're like, hey, I'm gonna go to Houston in 2 weeks, let's book it. So we're seeing a lot of that here specifically, but I know there's a lot of research tools that many, CVBs and as well as media agencies look to see in those specific areas, what's the sweet spot. And I think it changes all the time, and especially right now, bookings, the way that people are booking now is very different than 4 years ago. So we just always have to look at it every year.
Yeah. I think also, being very intentional about the messages that you're delivering and where it is in the funnel, right? And I think we see a lot in tourism advertising that we're targeting low in the funnel. We're targeting people that we know are already planning a trip, but we're sending them an inspirational message. Right, and so I think another key takeaway of what we've heard today is, layers, whether the layer is generational or whether the layer is where we are in the funnel, to just be breaking down our marketing plans into these, more specific levels of awareness. So thank you. You guys have been great, and thank you to Heather. Thank you, Kelly. It's been a pleasure to hear what you guys have to say today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.